2 minutes ago, Prince William reportedly changed a long-standing royal protocol, one that generations have followed without question. Not a minor adjustment. Not a quiet preference. A real break in tradition, made for one reason: his children's well-being. And inside the palace, that kind of move doesn't land like good parenting, it lands like a warning shot. Because if William is willing to rewrite protocol for George, Charlotte and Louis, then something has pushed him past patience and into protection mode. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It didn't roll out with fanfare. It didn't arrive through the usual slow drip of approvals and soft briefings designed to make change feel like it was always meant to happen. This shift came through a tightly controlled channel, the kind used when the palace wants to avoid chatter and prevent anyone from reshaping the story before it's even understood. Staff who normally anticipate every move were caught off guard, not because they missed a memo, but because the memo wasn't the kind you prepare for. It was the kind you obey and then quietly ask yourself what forced it into existence. William, according to whispers, framed the change around one word that rarely sits comfortably inside royal tradition: well-being. Not duty, not optics, not public confidence. Well-being. That choice of language is what made people pause. Because in royal life, well-being doesn't just mean comfort. It often signals a deeper concern, pressure that has crossed a line, exposure that is no longer manageable, a sense that the old rules aren't protecting the family the way they were designed to. When a future king uses that word in connection with his children, it suggests the danger isn't theoretical, it's felt. Advisors, insiders suggest, immediately saw the threat that had nothing to do with tabloids and everything to do with precedent. If William can change this protocol, then the system has to admit something it hates admitting: that long-standing rules are not sacred. They are adjustable. And if they are adjustable for the Wales children, then other royals might demand the same. Other households might push back. Other private lines might be drawn. A single parental decision becomes the beginning of a domino effect the institution can't easily stop. Catherine is portrayed, in the whispers swirling around this moment, as supportive but wary, because she understands two battles can happen at once. The first is the real battle, protecting the children. The second is the narrative battle, ensuring the palace, the press, and the public don't twist protection into weakness or instability. She knows how quickly well-being can be reframed into overreacting, how quickly a mother's caution can be turned into a story about control, and how quickly a father's boundary can be framed as a power grab. And that's where the tension becomes electric. A senior courtier reportedly views this not simply as a parenting move, but as a power move, William testing authority before he becomes king. Because protocol is one of the few invisible levers that keeps the monarchy predictable. When you touch protocol, you touch the machine. You expose how it works. You expose who benefits from it. You expose who is comfortable with it and who has been quietly suffering under it. So for some inside the system, William's move reads like protection. For others, it reads like a message: the future is coming, and it won't be managed the old way. Whispers hint at a triggering incident behind the scenes, something involving privacy, pressure, or safety. Not necessarily a dramatic public spectacle, but a moment that made William feel the old boundaries were being tested too aggressively. The kind of moment that forces a parent to stop negotiating with tradition and start defending their child's reality. Because once you believe your child is being pulled into a role too early, or pushed into exposure too often, the word protocol stops feeling like tradition and starts feeling like risk. And then comes the phrase that reportedly echoed inside the decision-making circle, repeated with the kind of finality that makes people stop pretending, not at their expense. 4 words, simple yet ruthless. It implies the children have already been paying a price. It implies someone or something has been asking too much. It implies William has reached the point where he would rather upset the system than allow one more demand to land on George, Charlotte, or Louis. And once that phrase is spoken, the story stops being about a change in routine. It becomes about a line being drawn. But to understand why William made such a drastic change so suddenly, you have to see what was happening behind the scenes, what pressure had been building around his children long before this protocol was rewritten. Royal protocol is designed to look stable, but stability can hide stress fractures. Insiders suggest this change didn't happen overnight. It was the end of a long build-up of small warning signs, the wrong people getting too close, the wrong stories circulating, the wrong expectations hardening around children who never chose this life. William allegedly reached a moment where normal stopped feeling safe. And once that happens, tradition becomes negotiable. It started with interest spikes that didn't feel natural. Not the ordinary public curiosity that follows any royal child, but sudden surges that seemed to arrive in patterns too neatly timed, too consistently focused, like someone was turning the volume knob up and down on command. One week the attention would be quiet, almost respectful. The next it would flare new chatter, new demands, new insistence on access that didn't match any public schedule. Insiders whisper that this wasn't random, it felt orchestrated. And when something feels orchestrated around your children, you stop calling it attention. You start calling it pressure. That pressure, according to those whispers, didn't only come from outside. It crept in through the way access was handled, who gets near the children, why they get near them, and how often being close was justified as duty. In royal life, proximity is power. And William allegedly began to sense that the children's world was becoming crowded with people whose roles were unclear, but whose confidence was unmistakable. Requests for appearances framed as good for the public, suggestions about routines disguised as best practice, invitations that sounded harmless but felt like entry points. The more he watched it, the more it seemed that the rules meant to protect his children were also being used to manage them. Catherine's protective instincts, insiders suggest, clashed repeatedly with advisors who treat exposure as duty. That's where the dread grows, because the palace can make anything sound reasonable if it's spoken in the language of tradition. It's expected. It's necessary. It's how it's always been done. And yet Catherine's focus, as the whispers frame it, remained brutally simple. Children don't owe anyone their peace, not their smiles, not their privacy, not their childhood. The problem is that royal life does not reward simple truths. It rewards compliance, and it punishes boundaries by calling them dramatic. William allegedly began noticing the same names, pushing the same approved routines, always with the same confident calm. Not one person, not one villain you can point at, but a repeating pattern of influence, certain advisors, certain courtiers, certain voices that always arrived with solutions that expanded access rather than reduced it. They spoke like they were protecting the institution, but their proposals kept pulling the children closer to the machinery of public life. Insiders say William recognized the telltale sign of a system defending itself. It insists it's acting for your benefit, while quietly acting for its own. And beneath all of it was a fear that doesn't show itself in public statements, but gnaws in private. The children were becoming symbols before they could be themselves. George, Charlotte, Louis, names that should belong to family life, were increasingly treated like brand assets, like reassurance tools, like future-proofing, like soft power. The more that happened, the more normal life stopped feeling normal. Because normal life has room to breathe. Normal life doesn't feel like a carefully managed corridor where everyone is watching how you walk. Staff whispers intensified. Insiders claim. But that's what staff whispers do. They rise like smoke and then get waved away by people who don't want to call it fire. Concerns were dismissed as overthinking until something happens. That's the danger of royal culture. It teaches people to normalize discomfort, to accept pressure as routine, to treat private alarm as inconvenient. But when you're a parent, you don't get to normalize what feels wrong. Not when the cost is your child's sense of safety. And then comes the private warning the one insiders say changed the temperature completely. A message delivered quietly, not in a dramatic confrontation, but in a way that suggests someone knew more than they were supposed to. A boundary, the warning implied, had been tested deliberately, not by accident, not by misunderstanding. Tested, like someone wanted to see whether the Wales household would push back or simply absorb it. That kind of test doesn't happen in innocent families. It happens in environments where access is negotiated and power is constantly probing for weakness. And when that boundary was tested, William's response wasn't to negotiate, he decided to change the rules. According to whispers, there was a moment brief, sharp, and impossible to ignore when William realized the old protocol was no longer protecting his children. It was exposing them. The incident wasn't public, but the impact was immediate. A shift in tone, a tightening of access, and a father who stopped discussing and started deciding. Because when a royal parent senses danger, real danger, tradition stops being sacred. It becomes a risk. It's framed as an access breach. Not a dramatic break-in, not a headline-grabbing scene, something quieter, which is often worse. Someone saw too much. Learned too much. Got too close. The kind of closeness that is always justified with polished words, routine, necessary, approved. But the whispers insist this time the closeness felt wrong, because it crossed a line that should never be negotiable when children are involved. And once that line was crossed, William's response wasn't emotional chaos. It was controlled fury. The kind that lives under royal composure, making his voice calmer even as his decision becomes irreversible. Catherine's reaction, insiders suggest, revealed that this fear hadn't arrived overnight. It had been building in quiet layers, moments that felt off, patterns that didn't sit right, requests that came with too much confidence. She didn't need to convince William something was wrong. She needed him to finally see what she had already felt. And when he did, the atmosphere changed, because William didn't look like a prince managing tradition anymore. He looked like a father measuring threats. Advisors, as the story goes, tried to minimize it. Manageable. Contained. Nothing we haven't handled before. That language is the palace's comfort blanket. Wrap the problem in procedure and pretend it stops being a problem. But this time, it didn't reassure William. It enraged him, because manageable is what you say when you're protecting the institution, not when you're protecting a child. The moment they tried to downplay the breach, William's mistrust deepened, not just of the situation, but of the people insisting the old system still worked. Then comes the warning that only fuels the fire. A key figure suggests William is overreacting. That word overreacting isn't advice. It's control. It's the attempt to shrink a father's instinct into a public relations inconvenience. And the whispers suggest William didn't accept it. He challenged it. Not with spectacle, but with that cold clarity that terrifies the palace more than anger ever could. He began compiling a pattern. Incidents that once looked isolated now looked connected. The wrong names appearing at the wrong times. The same approved routines pushing the children into predictable access points. The same insistence that exposure equals duty. That's when the story shifts from worry to proof. Because insiders say William referenced a briefing or a file, something official enough to confirm his fears. Something that turned instinct into certainty. A document doesn't need to be dramatic to be devastating. It only needs to show one thing: that the system saw the risk and still kept moving. And once William held that confirmation in his hands, the old protocol didn't look like tradition anymore. It looked like a vulnerability everyone had been trained to tolerate. The palace doesn't fight you with shouting, it fights you with procedure. Sources suggest that once William signaled he would change protocol, the pressure started instantly: meetings framed as routine, concerns disguised as tradition, and help offered in ways that quietly restore control. Because a future king rewriting long-standing rules isn't just a family decision, it's a shift in authority. And authority, inside the palace, is never surrendered without a fight. Advisors warned about precedent: if you do this, others will follow, as if protecting children is contagious. William was offered compromises that preserved the appearance of protocol while limiting the substance of change. Catherine was subtly framed as the emotional influence behind the decision, a familiar tactic designed to weaken William's authority by blaming modern sensitivity. Attempts were made to isolate him with separate conversations and selective briefings, as if splitting the couple could soften the boundary. And the children's well-being was reframed as an optics issue, infuriating William because it reduced his children to headlines. Staff access narrowed. Information became need to know. The circle tightened the way it always tightens when the institution feels threatened. And then came the most revealing move of all. A draft directive was allegedly altered, removing one powerful line. A line that made the boundary too clear, too permanent, too hard for the machine to reinterpret later. The kind of line that doesn't just change a rule, it exposes who the rule was protecting all along. And once briefings and files enter the conversation, it stops being about parenting, it becomes about power, control, and who gets to decide what happens to the heirs. But the real reason that line was removed becomes clear when you learn what William's new protocol actually blocks and who it blocks out. Insiders claim William's new protocol wasn't cosmetic, it was surgical. It didn't just adjust schedules. It cut off access. It narrowed the circle. It changed who can be near the children, when and under what conditions. And that's why the reaction inside the palace was so intense. Because when you block access in royal life, you're not just protecting kids, you're disrupting networks of influence that have existed for decades. The first thing it reportedly did was strike at the soft underbelly of palace power: who controls the family moments. Limits were placed on who could arrange appearances, handle schedules, and decide what the public would see and when. That matters more than people realize, because in royal life, access isn't just logistics, it's leverage. Whoever controls the calendar controls the narrative. Whoever controls the casual moments controls the image. And William's protocol, according to whispers, didn't politely request cooperation. It redefined the rules so access could no longer be assumed. Insiders say exposure was reduced immediately, fewer public engagements involving the children, fewer last-minute perfect opportunities, fewer instances where the children's presence could be used to soften a headline or stabilize an institution during a difficult week. The change wasn't framed as retreat. It was framed as protection. The kind of protection that doesn't negotiate with the public's appetite. Because once a child becomes a comfort blanket for public perception, childhood starts shrinking fast. Then came the tighter control around the people allowed into the children's orbit. New vetting, clearer boundaries, less room for third parties to drift in under the excuse of duty or tradition. The whispers suggest this wasn't paranoia, it was a recognition that vulnerability often enters through familiarity, through routine, through approved faces that no one questions because questioning them would be awkward. William's protocol, as insiders frame it, made awkwardness acceptable. It made discomfort the price of safety. It narrowed the circle until trust could be measured rather than assumed. The palace's fear, according to sources, wasn't only about William's children. It was about a chain reaction. If William can draw a boundary this hard, others might follow. Other royals might demand similar limits. Other households might start closing doors. And once that happens, the institution loses one of its most powerful tools: predictable access. That's why some insiders heard William's language about well-being, but interpreted it as something else entirely: a security posture. A signal that he believes there's risk not just outside the gates, but inside the system that decides who gets close. Catherine, according to the whispers, supported the move while already bracing for the counterattack. Because she knows how quickly a protective decision can be reframed as control, how fast boundaries become instability, how easily the press and palace machinery can paint modern parenting as rebellion. The contrast is brutal. A couple trying to protect their children, and an institution that views protection as a disruption of tradition. In that clash, Catherine understands the truth: winning the real battle means surviving the narrative battle too. And then comes the warning that lands like a cold breath. The institution can still intervene through protocol. That's the part that changes everything, because it implies the fight isn't just about schedules or privacy, it's about authority. Who ultimately has the power to decide what happens to the heirs? William can set rules, but the machine can test them, bend them, delay them, or quietly challenge them through procedure. William may be the future king, but inside the palace, the future is always negotiated. Sources suggest the institution tested William's resolve, immediately subtle challenges, quiet delays, and whispers designed to make him doubt the cost of defiance. Because if he holds this line now, he proves something dangerous, that the old rules can be changed. And if the old rules can be changed, the people who benefit from them lose power. Implementation slowed through procedural obstacles, extra approvals, necessary reviews, sudden questions that weren't asked before. Rumors surfaced framing William as controlling or unstable under stress, as if protecting your children is evidence of weakness. Catherine became a target in the narrative too, blamed for modernizing, painted as the influence behind William's decision to soften his authority and make it look emotional rather than strategic. A trusted insider, sources claim, warned William about retaliation and reputational tactics, the quiet kind that doesn't look like war until it has already done its damage. And that's where William's internal conflict sharpens. Protect his kids at all costs, or avoid igniting an institutional war that could consume everything around them. But the more the palace tests him, the clearer the choice becomes. Because backing down wouldn't just change a protocol, it would teach the system that his boundaries can be negotiated. So William considers escalating, making the protocol irreversible, forcing clarity, even risking public fallout if that's what it takes to lock the boundary in place. And then the final escalation arrives. A private meeting is scheduled to decide what William is allowed to control. Not what's best, not what's safest, what he is allowed. And when William hears that warning, he realizes this fight isn't only about his children, it's about whether the palace can override him. And once a meeting is scheduled to decide what a father is allowed to protect, William stops playing defense. The most dangerous rooms in royal life are the quiet ones. Reports suggest the final meeting wasn't loud, it was loaded. William arrives knowing compromise would turn his children's well-being into a bargaining chip, and he refuses. Because this isn't about convenience, it's about identity, it's about childhood, and it's about the kind of king William intends to be. When he speaks, the room allegedly goes still, not because he shouts, but because he makes it clear the debate is over. Insiders describe two factions emerging with icy clarity. One side argues for well-being, real protection, real boundaries, real change. The other clings to tradition at all costs, insisting that once you bend protocol for one household, you weaken the entire structure. And William, according to the whispers, doesn't meet that argument with emotion. He meets it with calm authority. No theatrics, no raised voice. Just a steady refusal to trade his children's safety for an institution's comfort. In that moment, he isn't negotiating as a prince. He's establishing himself as a future king who will not be managed. Advisors reportedly warned him about optics, the way they always do when they're losing ground. They framed the issue as perception, as precedent, as public reaction. William insisted optics don't outweigh safety. That single stance is what made the room feel dangerous, because it exposed the core tension in modern monarchy. When you prioritize human well-being over tradition, You force everyone else to admit what they have been prioritizing all along. And once that admission hangs in the air, the old methods stop working. Catherine's presence and support, insiders suggest, shifted the emotional balance without needing a single dramatic moment. Not because she made speeches, but because her alignment with William made division tactics useless. The palace can usually soften a stance by isolating spouses, turning one into the practical one and the other into the emotional one. But if Catherine stood there steady, then the story couldn't be framed as a temporary mood. It became a unified parental line, one the institution couldn't break without exposing itself. That's when the condition was added quietly, decisively changing how the children would be handled moving forward. Not a vague promise. A concrete rule. A boundary that restructured access in a way that made the old influence networks suddenly feel powerless. Insiders describe it as the moment the meeting's energy changed, because everyone realized this wasn't a compromise to calm William down. It was a mechanism to make the change stick, a lock on the door rather than a polite request to knock. The palace retreated, not with real agreement, but with uneasy compliance. That kind of compliance is always revealing, because it means the institution didn't surrender out of understanding, it surrendered out of calculation. It recognized that forcing the fight would create a worse outcome, either a public backlash, a deeper internal fracture, or a future king who remembers exactly who tried to bargain with his children's well-being. So the meeting ended the way high-stakes palace conflicts often end. Polite words on the surface, a cold shift underneath, and a sense that something irreversible had just happened. And the most chilling part is what comes after. Because insiders claim this is where the palace expects the storm to fade, where they assume tradition will quietly reassert itself. But William's protocol change didn't calm the system. It exposed it. The children are more protected, yes, but the institution is more threatened too. And William emerges from this not as a prince making a parenting choice, but as a future king, showing the world what he will and won't tolerate. Because when he chose his children over protocol, he chose a new kind of monarchy. A new quiet order forms almost immediately. Less access, fewer leaks, tighter circles. On the outside, there's calm, the kind the palace loves. On the inside, relationships cool. People become cautious. Conversations shorten. Trust becomes selective. William grows more guarded and more decisive. Because once you draw a line like this, you can't pretend you didn't. The emotional cost is real. Protection comes with isolation and increased scrutiny, and the family feels the weight of being watched even more closely because they dared to say no. And the palace watches and waits, because institutions don't forget being challenged. They file the moment away. They study it. They plan around it. The final twist, teased in whispers, is that this change may connect to a deeper truth, something William learned that forced his hand, something that made protocol feel less like tradition and more like danger. And the cliffhanger is the one that lingers. A whisper suggests another protocol may be next one that affects succession optics, one that moves beyond the children and into the monarchy's future itself. And once that condition becomes known, it's clear William didn't just change a protocol, he changed the power structure around his children. And just when it feels like the palace has contained the damage, one last detail emerges, proof that William's decision wasn't a single moment, it was the beginning of a larger reckoning. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.